In 1993, Linda Hale, a 29-year-old FBI intelligence analyst, walked out of Quantico's behavioral analysis unit one rainy Thursday evening and was never seen again. Her disappearance triggered a quiet internal probe, not publicized, not broadcast, because Linda wasn't a field agent or public figure. She worked behind the scenes, sorting intercepted communications and red-flagged phone calls. But internally, everyone knew her case was different. Hale had been working on something highly classified, a series of encrypted transmissions bouncing between US cell towers and remote locations in Eastern Europe. 2 weeks before she vanished, she told her supervisor she'd found a pattern. She never elaborated. And then she disappeared. No forced entry at her apartment. Her car was found neatly parked in the garage, all personal belongings untouched, except her FBI laptop, which was never recovered. After 6 months of no leads, the Bureau quietly closed the file, labeling her presumed dead by abduction or foul play. But 31 years later, in the spring of 2024, something strange happened. During a DEA wiretap operation targeting a suspected cartel lieutenant in Nevada, agents intercepted a brief, garbled transmission during a call between two encrypted burner phones. Most of it was static, white noise and machine pulses. But between the noise, a voice emerged. Female, distorted, barely audible. The techs almost missed it, but a digital voice fingerprint match came back. 94.8% probability, the voice was Linda Hale's. It lasted 6 seconds, and what she said chilled the room to silence. "This is Hale. Still inside. They can hear us. Shut it down." When the audio was reviewed, everyone thought it was a prank, a glitch in the algorithm, an echo from another line. But when the software matched it to Linda's 1992 testimony on cartel encryption methods, the DEA alerted the FBI. Within 48 hours, a full task force was assembled under the codename Operation Halcyon. Agent Marcus Venn, a 20-year Bureau veteran specializing in interagency leaks and high-risk disappearances, was pulled from early retirement to lead it. He had known Linda, briefly. They were in the same training cohort, though she chose analysis and he went tactical. They'd spoken maybe 3 times. But he remembered her voice. Software measured, unmistakable. The voice on the wiretap wasn't an AI synthesis or old audio spliced in. He was sure of it. Someone had her, or had kept her. And the phrase, "still inside," suggested one thing above all. She was alive, somewhere, and they had very little time to find out where. The transmission was traced to a cell tower west of Ely, Nevada, near the Utah border. Nothing was supposed to be there, just desert, scrub, and long-abandoned mining routes. But the signal had bounced off a repeater on an old radio tower, and the relay logs showed something else. The phone that sent the transmission wasn't just nearby. It was physically inside the range of a secure line tied to a decommissioned Department of Energy site, one that was supposed to have been dismantled in 2003. Marcus stared at the data packet for hours, analyzing every digit. He couldn't shake one growing realization. This wasn't about cartel encryption anymore. This wasn't about drugs or intel leaks. Someone had built a communication tunnel underneath the federal radar, and somehow Linda Hale was inside it. The deeper he dug, the more he understood why her case had been buried. Records had been sealed, logs were altered, and no trace of her laptop was ever recovered until now. Because 3 days after the voice transmission, that same decommissioned tower pinged again. Only this time, it sent coordinates. The coordinates led to a dry flatland about 22 miles outside of Ely, Nevada, a stretch of wind-burned nothing that locals only referred to as Dead Sector 9. No power lines, no paved roads, no reason for anyone to be there unless they were burying something or someone. Marcus Venn arrived just after sunrise, accompanied by a 3-vehicle federal convoy posing as a geological survey team. The Bureau was careful not to alert local authorities, not yet. too much of this smelled internal. The location corresponded to an old Department of Energy storage site listed as decommissioned in 2003 after a series of environmental containment failures. But there were no satellite photos from that year, only blurred map tiles and missing logs. Venn stepped out of the vehicle, the wind dry and biting, and stared at the land around him. Flat scrub with a thin crust of alkaline dust that cracked underfoot. But the ground wasn't right. Two of the younger agents, digital forensics guys, brought out electromagnetic soil readers. Readings spiked immediately. There was iron, copper, layered shielding materials, and one unmistakable find: military-grade fiber optic cabling. "Something's buried here," one of them muttered, adjusting his equipment. Marcus crouched down and traced the edge of a barely visible seam in the dust, a square imprint maybe 12 feet across, where the soil had settled differently. He pulled out a field blade and scraped along the corner. The steel struck something, a dull metallic clang. "We've got a hatch," he said. Within minutes, they had unearthed a reinforced steel door, cold to the touch, padlocked with a rusting biometric latch system and no visible keypad. The model was outdated, but high security, the kind used in black sites and military bunkers. The forensics team cracked it open with a printed silicone mold lifted from the latch's fingerprint residue. The door released with a soft hiss. Stale air rolled out, old, dry, and metallic. What they saw below made everyone pause. A ladder descended into blackness, its rungs bolted to concrete lined with reflective insulation. "No stairs," Venn said. "No cameras, no sensors. Someone built this to disappear." He climbed down first, his weapon drawn, flashlight clipped to his chest rig. The air was colder the deeper he went, unnaturally cold for the desert. 60 feet below, the ladder opened into a narrow hallway, smooth walls, soundproofed. No visible wiring. Everything was built for silence. The corridor ended at a sealed steel door. Next to it, an old-style voice intercom with a cracked button labeled "Inbound" in fading paint. Marcus hesitated, then pressed the button. Nothing. He pressed again. Still nothing. Then, faintly, a hiss of static, and a voice, female, dry, brittle, almost mechanical. "Protocol ID." Venn didn't answer. Instead, he keyed his mic. "This is Agent Marcus Venn with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're responding to an active signal from this location. Is there anyone inside?" Silence. Then a second voice, the same one they'd heard on the DEA wiretap. "You shouldn't have come. They hear everything down here." Then, click. Deadline. The door in front of them unlocked with a loud mechanical thunk. Lights flickered on overhead, dull fluorescence buzzing faintly. Venn signaled for backup. They entered slowly, weapons raised. What lay beyond was not just a bunker, it was a research facility, empty, sterile, cold, computers still running, medical equipment covered with dust, but intact. And then, in the far back, beyond 2 security gates and a decontamination hall, they found room 6C. Inside, a chair, shackled, blood-stained, monitors wired to EEG machines, and on a side table, something impossible, a cracked laptop with an FBI inventory tag dated 1993. Hale's laptop, her name still engraved on the underside. Files were open. One titled helioscycle.dat blinked red on the screen, requesting a password. The analysts moved in. Venn stepped back. Every inch of this was wrong. Someone had turned Linda's intelligence work into something else. Something hidden deep enough that 3 decades of search efforts hadn't even come close. They had just started unlocking the terminal when a piercing alarm began to sound. Not from inside the lab, but from Venn's comms. The voice returned. Same transmission quality, just 5 words. "They're coming. Get out. Now." The voice vanished as suddenly as it had come, just 5 words. "They're coming. Get out. Now." But it was the tone that struck Marcus Venn harder than any alarm. Not panic, not a scream, just clarity, urgency. A final warning, sharp as glass. "Everyone move," he shouted, already unplugging the terminal as the alarm's low drone began to shift into a rising klaxon. "Leave the gear, take the drive." One of the analysts yanked the laptop's internal SSD from its casing as sparks flickered from the terminal's power unit. A second tone echoed down the corridor, deeper, mechanical, and more menacing. "That's not our alarm," someone whispered. "It's internal." Ven scanned the overhead wiring, tracing it to a motion sensor system that had just activated along the main shaft. A digital screen near the steel door lit up with a countdown. T-10:00. System cleanse initiated. "They rigged this place for burn," Ven muttered. "Move." They retraced their path toward the hatch, flashlights bouncing wildly off the metallic walls as vents began to hiss along the ceiling. A thin vapor was spilling out, chemical, not smoke, some kind of sterilization compound. "Close your mouths," one of the agents yelled, pulling up a field mask. Ven shoved the SSD into a protective casing and kept his weapon raised. Halfway to the ladder, they heard it, a dull grinding noise from deeper in the bunker. Heavy doors closing, locks sealing. "They're shutting down every exit," said Reyes, the junior tech. "If we don't climb out now, we're done." By the time they reached the ladder, the countdown had reached 6 minutes. Ven was the last up, making sure every man made it above ground. The second his boots hit daylight, he turned and slammed the hatch shut. "Seal it," he ordered. One of the field agents, a demolition specialist named Carter, produced a thermite patch and sealed the seams. Inside, muffled now, the alarm kept rising. And then, without warning, the desert floor trembled. A low boom followed, a sound like the air itself being crushed. A plume of pressurized gas shot up from beneath the ground behind the hatch, sending a geyser of dust 30 feet into the sky. The agents stumbled back as the hatch buckled outward and then imploded, a controlled implosion not designed to destroy evidence, but to bury it. Ven stood frozen, sweat mixing with desert dust on his face. Someone had activated a contingency protocol, not automatic, triggered, which meant they were watching, or listening, or both. "Get this site locked down," Ven ordered. "No one in or out. We'll dig it up again if we have to." He pulled out his encrypted sat phone and called Quantico. "It's Ven. Halcyon is compromised. The site's been purged. We have the drive, but someone blew the facility before we could finish extraction. Possible internal leak. I want all communications encrypted, level 7, and get me a meeting with Cyber Division now." Back at their mobile operations unit, disguised as a geological survey trailer, they inserted the extracted SSD into a quarantine laptop. The screen flickered, then displayed the only visible file. Heliocycle.dat. Encrypted. Military grade. Not FBI standard, but something older. Darker. "Can you crack it?" Ven asked. Reyes shook his head. "Not here. This isn't bureau encryption. This is spliced. It's got NSA signatures, but also something I've never seen before, maybe pre-Prism surveillance protocol, like someone took a Cold War cipher and welded it onto modern quantum shielding." "Translation?" Ven asked. "Linda Hale didn't just analyze intercepts," Reyes said. "She built something or found something someone built. This file is trying to talk to something. It's a handshake protocol, meaning there's a receiver out there waiting." "Waiting for what?" Reyes hesitated. "For her." That night, they flew back to DC on a black flight. No manifest, no briefing. The SSD was locked in a titanium case handcuffed to Ven's wrist. As they disembarked on the Quantico tarmac, Assistant Director Riley was waiting. Tall, silver hair, no expression. "Follow me," he said. No greetings, no questions. Just a silent escort through 2 levels of security until they reached SCIF Room 47C, a secure compartmentalized facility used for the Bureau's highest-level covert reviews. Inside, Cyber Division Chief Elise Tanaka and Behavioral Sciences Director Adrian Foss were already seated. A screen displayed the waveform of Linda Hale's intercepted voice transmission. We've heard it, Foss said. Twice. You were right, Marcus. It's her. And, Ven asked, why bury her case for 30 years? Tanaka leaned forward, her voice low. Because Linda Hale was never supposed to be working on cartel codes. That was a cover. She was assigned to intercept unsanctioned intra-agency transmissions. Specifically, a group known as Chimera. A deep cell operating beneath legitimate bureau structure. Her laptop wasn't just for data, it was a bridge. She was building a mirror protocol to track where those signals led. And did she find it? Ven asked. She found the gate, Foss replied. And then they took her. Took her where? Tanaka tapped a folder on the table marked Classified B7. We don't know, but we know this. Chimera wasn't just a surveillance leak, it was a containment network, one designed to locate, isolate, and silence internal threats before they became public. Linda Hale became one of those threats. So they buried her? They used her, Tanaka said, or tried to, but Hale was smart. Too smart. She embedded fail-safes, left breadcrumbs. That drive you recovered, it's one of them. Ven sat back, the weight of the case still strapped to his wrist. She sent that transmission. She triggered the file. She led us there, which means she's alive. Or was the room fell silent? Then Foss said, there's something else. He tapped the screen. The voice print you intercepted, there's a second layer, underneath the vocal waveform, ultrasonic, embedded metadata. What kind of metadata? Foss pressed a key. A spectrogram filled the screen. Digital noise, patterns, then numbers. GPS coordinates, new ones. She's still moving, Foss said, and now we know where she's going next. Ven's voice was steady. Then we follow. And outside, the storm was just beginning. The second set of coordinates pointed to a stretch of rocky wilderness in Montana, deep inside the boundaries of Gallatin National Forest, federal land, uninhabited, miles from any main road, and legally inaccessible without high-level clearance. But by the time Marcus Ven arrived with his new Halcyon team, the forest wasn't empty. It was watching them. The helicopter touched down in a clearing just before dusk. Pines loomed tall and silent, their dark silhouettes rising like sentries. A perimeter team had already secured the landing site, posing as environmental surveyors. Ven stepped off the chopper and adjusted his headset, eyes sweeping the tree line. The coordinates were precise, 45.096 degrees north, 111.364 degrees west, a ridge halfway up a bluff that overlooked a frozen stream. No signs of habitation, no cell towers, no buildings, just rock, snow, and wind. But then Reyes called out from 20 yards ahead. Sir, we've got signal anomalies. Ven followed him up the slope, boots crunching through old frost and soil. They reached the base of a large granite formation that looked like part of the natural terrain until you got closer. Embedded inside the rock was a vertical slit about 5 feet tall and a foot wide, covered by a hinged steel panel that had been camouflaged to look like stone. Reyes peeled it back with gloved hands, revealing a narrow slot with blinking infrared sensors. What is it? Ven asked. Proximity scanner, Reyes said. Military tech, early 2000s, but repurposed, probably updated with AI response logic. That means this isn't a bunker, it's a listening post. Listening to what? Us. Everything. Phones, radios, probably our chopper too. I think Linda used this spot to bounce her second signal. This is her second breadcrumb. Ven reached into his tactical vest and retrieved the titanium case containing the SSD from the Nevada site. See if this device talks to it. Reyes nodded and connected the drive to a secure field reader. A series of green lights pulsed. Then, a hum. Low, electrical, and rising. The rock face beside them shuddered. Not from tremor, but from mechanics. A rectangular panel about 6 feet wide retracted inward, revealing a narrow corridor cut directly into the stone. Cold air rushed out, dry and sterile. "Open," Reyes whispered. She keyed it to the drive. "She left this here for us." "Flashlights only, no wireless," Ven said. "No radios. If this is Linda's safe point, she'll have kill switches everywhere." They entered single file. The corridor stretched about 20 feet before opening into a circular chamber carved into the granite. The room was small, maybe 12 feet in diameter, but meticulously arranged. A cot, 2 water jugs, a solar-powered generator, and against the far wall, a weatherproof hard case filled with tapes, notepads, and old tech, mini DV cassettes, micro drives, and a thick analog radio transceiver. On the wall above the cot, someone had written a phrase in black permanent marker. "I am still here." Ven approached slowly. The handwriting matched Linda Hale's old notes from her Quantico personnel file. Same pressure, same rhythm. She'd been here, lived here, possibly for years. Reyes activated the tape player, and a click filled the air, followed by static, then Linda's voice. Calm, tired, recorded years ago. "If you're hearing this, you found the first gate. That means you're close. I don't know who you are, but if you're Bureau, understand this. Chimera isn't a cell, it's a mirror. The people behind it don't just hide. They reflect back what you want to see. Good men, loyal agents, decorated brass. You won't see them coming because you already trust them." Ven froze, the weight of her words settling in like fog. "She's not just warning us," he muttered. "She's telling us where to look." Reyes played the next tape. "In 1993, I traced encrypted chatter between known narco routes and black budget sites, but the patterns didn't match cartel codes. They matched defense contractors, and one specific name came up 11 times. Virex Dynamics. Look for the payrolls. Look at who approved the ghost clearances. Chimera isn't hiding in the shadows. It's embedded in the light." Reyes looked up. "Virex Dynamics? That's a private weapons contractor. They have contracts with Homeland, NSA, even the CDC, and a facility in upstate New York," Ven said quietly. "I saw it on the red list last year, flagged for internal audit, then cleared 2 days later. No explanation." The third tape clicked into place. "I left a third site. If I'm not alive to lead you there, use the frequency embedded in this tape. But listen closely. The next gate is hot. Chimera monitors it daily. You'll need to triangulate signal bounce from 3 receivers and decrypt in analog. No digital systems. They'll trace those. Use the map in the case. It's in the lining." Reyes opened the weatherproof case and examined the inside lining. Sure enough, stitched into the seam was a folded paper map marked with 3 red X's, all in the Adirondack Mountains. Ven stood in the center of the stone chamber, turning in place, absorbing the space. Linda Hale had lived here, hidden here, broadcasted from here, survived. But how long? And was she still alive? Or had she become a ghost, trailing her own breadcrumbs, trying to lead someone, anyone, to the truth? Ven looked at the wall again. "I am still here." Was it a statement or a plea? "We move to New York," he said. "Prep a secure convoy. I want ground transportation only, no flights. If Chimera sees us coming, we're dead before we touch the state line." Reyes shut down the devices. If she really set this up, then she didn't just survive. She planned this for years, anticipated every countermeasure, every kill switch. "Which means," Ven said, "whatever she found, whatever Chimera really is, must be big enough to justify disappearing her for 3 decades. And outside, beyond the hidden rock door, the forest was silent again, watching, listening, waiting for what came next. The road into the Adirondacks was narrow, icy, and flanked by dense pine forest that absorbed every sound like a vacuum. It had been 19 hours since the Montana listening post, and Marcus Venn hadn't slept. Neither had Reyes. who now sat beside him in the armored SUV, decoding analog radio bursts on a rig they'd cobbled together from 90s-era equipment. The rest of the Halcyon task force followed in 2 unmarked vehicles, spaced for safety, but close enough to respond if anything went wrong. They were heading toward a point on Linda Hale's stitched map, the final red X labeled only Echo 13. Cross-referencing the name through unredacted CIA archives had brought up a single declassified entry from 1981. Echo 13, NORAD-linked radar installation, decommissioned and sealed under Project Bishop. Officially inactive, coordinates classified. It had once been part of the Strategic Defense Initiative, a Cold War experiment in early orbital threat detection. But as far as any modern record showed, Echo 13 didn't exist. Yet Linda had marked it, carefully, precisely. And now they were here, winding up frost-bitten ridgelines beneath a dull gray sky toward what had been erased from maps but not from memory. Reyes tapped the analog rig, listening through old military headphones. "We're picking up bounce. Strong signal, intermittent burst. Frequency matches the code embedded in her last tape. She left a beacon running. That means power. If there's still electricity, there's still something alive inside," Ven finished. At 1400 hours, they reached a clearing. Snowdrifts formed uneven patches across cracked pavement, the remnants of what had once been a helicopter landing pad. Beyond it stood a squat concrete building with a rusted satellite dish collapsed against its roof, overgrown with black vines. A corroded sign, barely legible through frost, read, "Echo 13 Monitoring Outpost." The structure looked abandoned, but they'd learned better by now. "Stack up," Ven ordered. 2 agents approached the steel front door, which hung slightly ajar. Inside, complete darkness, no lights, no sound, just cold air seeping out like breath from a long dead lung. Ven stepped in first, flashlight beam cutting through swirling dust. The walls were lined with peeling paint and military-style signage. Authorized personnel only. No transmissions beyond this point. The hallway angled downward into the rock. The floor sloped, suggesting deeper sublevels beneath the surface. And then Reyes said, "Sir." She was here. Look on the wall to their right. Someone had written again in permanent marker. The same careful block letters. "Don't trust the static." Below it, taped to the wall, was an old reel-to-reel audio cassette. A note in Linda's handwriting. "Play this where you found the others. It won't decode anywhere else." Reyes gently removed the tape and stored it in a Faraday sleeve. "She's playing chess across 30 years, he whispered. "How did she plan all this?" "She didn't just run," Ven said. "She laid a trap." They continued deeper. The air thickened with age and rust. Old terminals lined a central operations room where faded displays still showed NORAD insignias and out-of-date missile trajectories. One terminal was newer, much newer. Its screen cracked, but its hard drive intact. The wiring had been updated within the last 10 years. "This place was reactivated," Reyes said. "They tried to bury it. Then someone resurrected it for black comms. Maybe even for Chimera. Or maybe she did," Ven said, "to throw Chimera off their own trail." He turned toward the far wall, a reinforced vault door marked Sublevel 3, Research and Signals Archive. The biometric panel beside it was dead, but a nearby keypad still blinked faintly. "Think it still works?" Ven asked. "Depends on who's watching," Reyes muttered, then input a bypass code using Hale's frequency cipher. For a moment, nothing. Then, a deep, grinding clunk as the vault door shuddered and began to retract. Cold air blasted out, stale and metallic. They descended into a bunker untouched by time. Row after row of magnetic tape reels, microfilm, and CRT monitors filled the sublevel. At the far end, someone had cleared a space. A chair, a mattress, a power inverter, and a laptop, powered by solar-fed battery packs still humming with charge. This was her second home, Reyes said. She survived here, alone. But why keep moving? On the chair sat a small case labeled Echo Relay / Do Not Open Until Primary Breach. Reyes glanced at Ven. This is it, whatever this is. It's what she built all this around. Open it. Reyes flipped the latches. Inside, resting in molded foam, was a miniaturized hard drive sealed in resin and connected to an analog adapter. A label etched into the casing read, Project Hale, Mirror Trace 01, Live Keys. Suddenly the lights in the sublevel flickered, once, twice, then held steady. That's not us, Ven said. That's external. Sir, one of the perimeter agents called over the secure line. Movement outside. No vehicles, but something's triggering the motion sensors near the tree line. Multiple heat signatures, not animals. Ven's stomach dropped. She was right. They're still watching the site. We need to extract now. But before they could move, the CRT screens along the far wall lit up, all at once. No signal input, just a single frame on each. A surveillance still of each Halcyon team member. And on the center screen, Agent Marcus Ven's Bureau ID photo. Beneath it, a line of text blinked slowly. We see you too. For a long second, no one spoke. Then Reyes whispered, Sir, she didn't just track Chimera. She made them turn the mirror around. Outside in the forest, something moved. The silence inside Echo 13 fractured all at once. A single shot cracked through the hallway, not from outside, but from within. It echoed through the concrete like a hammer to the spine. Ven spun toward the source, weapon drawn, just as one of the agents, Thompson, collapsed to the floor behind them, blood spilling from a hole just above his collarbone. The other agents ducked instinctively, taking cover behind consoles. Where's the shooter? Ven barked. Back hallway, interior stairwell, Reyes shouted. Another shot rang out, closer this time. The sublevel wasn't being breached from the forest. The breach was already inside. Secure the relay drive, Ven ordered, motioning for Reyes to take the Project HALE hard drive. Reyes grabbed it and ducked behind the far server stack while Ven crawled to Thompson's side. He was gone, eyes glassed over, blood already pooling. Son of a bitch, Ven hissed, rising into a crouch. Who the hell fired that shot? A footstep echoed from the lower corridor, deliberate, unfazed. Then a voice, calm, familiar, and cold. Agent Ven, it said, drop your weapon. You've gone far enough. The voice belonged to Special Agent Darren Locke, a Halcyon field lead, one of Ven's most trusted men. The same man who'd trained under him during his last stint at Quantico. Darren, Ven shouted, what the hell are you doing? Locke stepped into view, weapon raised, but not in fear, in certainty. He wore no tactical vest now, just bureau black and a strange expression, regret threaded with resignation. You should have stayed in DC, Locke said. We gave you your badge back, let you run Halcyon. You were never supposed to find the third site. Your Chimera, Ven said. Not a question, a truth. It landed like stone. Locke didn't flinch. Number Chimera doesn't exist. Not like you think. It's not a group, not a code name. It's a firewall, a human firewall. We stop leaks before they burn down the whole system. Linda Hale was going to burn the system. She found something, Ven growled. Something your people were doing through black communications. She left a trail. She wasn't supposed to, Locke said. She was supposed to disappear quietly, but she wouldn't die, wouldn't stop. She built relays inside ghost facilities we thought were wiped, and every time we tried to bury her, she found another way to speak. So you kept her. We reprogrammed her, broke her, but her mind was too sharp. She found a way to embed messages inside the very tools we use to silence her. Every power relay, every analog code, she turned them into beacons. Behind Ven, Reyes worked silently, connecting the miniaturized hard drive to a power bank and screen. Data began to load, cascading lines of old bureau memos, internal emails, unapproved transfers, and then images, dozens of them, children, detainment sites, organ harvesting logs, psychological warfare programs tested on civilian populations under code names like Indigo Drift and Quiet Blade. And in the bottom corner of the drive's file tree, a single file labeled confession-1995.hale. Sir, Reyes whispered. She recorded everything. It's all here. Ven raised his weapon toward Locke. It's over. We found the signal. We found her. Locke's eyes narrowed. No, Marcus, you found a decoy. Hale was dead before you got to Nevada. What you're following is a ghost program. It speaks in her voice, but it's not her anymore. She encoded herself into the data. Pieces of her, splinters of logic. A I before A, I had a name. You're lying, Ven spat. She was alive. That was her voice. She warned us. You think people just survive 30 years in the shadows? Locke said. Hale built mirrors. You're chasing reflections. Ven didn't answer. Instead, he fired. 2 quick shots. Locke dropped instantly, a look of grim surprise freezing on his face as he crumpled. The other agents secured the hallway. Ven moved fast, grabbing Locke's comms unit and checking his active transmission. Sir, Reyes called, pointing to the CRT screen. Look, the center monitor had changed again. Now it displayed a schematic. Not of Echo 13, but of an entire underground network. 6 sites across the United States. Linked, hidden, all active, and blinking red. She found the whole thing, Reyes said. Linda Hale mapped the entire Chimera infrastructure. She didn't just expose them, she outplayed them. And now they know we know, Ven said. Outside, the motion sensors tripped again. Heat signatures now surrounded the perimeter. Dozens of them. Unmarked vehicles. No government tags. No insignias. Just blacked out SUVs moving in slow formation. Extraction now, Ven shouted into the comm. We're under siege. Repeat, Echo 13 is compromised. We need airborne evac now. ETA 7. Minutes, the reply came. You'll need to hold the ridge. We don't have 7, Ven said. Then the first bullet shattered the sub-level entrance light. The firefight had begun. The first wave came in silence. No shouted orders, no warning shots. Just the sharp crack of suppressed rifles tearing through pine and cold air. The agents defending Echo 13 returned fire instinctively, forming a defensive perimeter around the structure's only accessible entrance. Ven crouched behind a snow-covered generator, directing fire with one hand while gripping the drive case with the other. Hold them back. Delay until the evac bird lands. Across the clearing, Agent Malik dropped behind a downed tree, returning fire with short, surgical bursts. 2 down left side, but they're flanking west, coming in fast. Ven turned to Reyes, who was hunched over the analog relay drive inside the control room. We're not going to hold this position long. Can you extract anything else? I don't know, Reyes replied, fingers flying across the clunky keyboard. She built this system like a maze. It's not just files. It's a broadcast trigger. Broadcast to where? I don't think it's where. I think it's who. Just then, a low hum vibrated through the floor. Every terminal inside Echo 13 flickered, and the main monitor displayed a blinking prompt. Access granted, final mirror, key activated. And then came the voice. Not a recording, not static, live. If you're hearing this, I'm gone, but that doesn't mean I'm lost. It was Linda Hale. Real time. Her voice broadcast through a system everyone believed she'd abandoned. You think you've found answers, but Chimera was never a person or a place. Chimera is what the Bureau became when it stopped looking inward, when it started silencing truth for the sake of continuity. I gave them 30 years to come clean. They buried me instead. Outside, gunfire intensified. The dark SUVs had stopped, men in full tactical armor now advancing on foot, no insignias, no visible ID. Reyes ducked instinctively as a round shattered the glass beside him. "She's triggering a signal," he yelled. "Not just audio. Uplink. She's going wideband." On the screen, Linda's voice continued. "You've probably heard whispers of the gates, of Project Quiet Blade, of Crosswind. It's real. It's all real. The people taken, the cities mapped, the behavioral files. They called it security. I called it theft. So I took it back. And now, I'm giving it to everyone else." And with that, the system began to upload every file, every redacted document, every classified internal directive that had sat buried in the Project Hale drive now streamed upward through the analog uplink, bypassing bureau firewalls, jumping between low Earth satellites, broadcasting to every dormant server Hale had mirrored in secret. "It's a dead man's switch," Reyes whispered, awestruck. She didn't want to be rescued. She wanted someone to trip the last wire. Then grabbed the radio. "Bird, what's your status?" "2 minutes out," came the pilot's voice. "But you've got birds inbound from another vector. Unknown ID, heavy payload." Ven's blood ran cold. If Chimera scrambled air support, Echo 13 would be ash before they could escape. "We hold until the last packet clears, no matter what." One of the exterior agents stumbled into the control room, blood streaking his temple. "They're bringing a jammer. Signal's going to get cut." Reyes's screen displayed a new warning. "Incoming interference detected. Uplink stability compromised." "Copy the master file to every portable drive," Ven yelled. "We can't let it die here." Suddenly, Linda's voice returned, calmer, more intimate. "To whoever's listening, this isn't vengeance, it's memory. If they want to erase me, then I'll become the one thing they can't delete, a truth embedded in the system they built to hide from it." Outside, the evac chopper appeared just above the tree line, its searchlights sweeping through snow flurries. A missile shot past it, missing by inches. "You're taking fire," the pilot screamed. "We'll circle once. You've got 30 seconds. Ven grabbed Reyes, yanking him to his feet as the screens behind them began to flicker and burn. A jammer had been deployed. The broadcast was dying, but one last message uploaded completely, a text file titled memory-001.hale. Ven secured it into a drive and shouted to the others, "Fall back, extraction now." The agents covered each other in retreat, moving in pairs toward the landing zone. Smoke from flash grenades filled the clearing. Behind them, Echo 13's relay drive crackled, systems failing as magnetic interference began to tear through its circuits. But Ven had the core, Linda's core. Gunfire followed them all the way to the evac line. A second missile exploded against the northern slope, sending trees toppling. The chopper hovered low, its skids already red from incoming tracer fire. "Go! Go!" shouted the crew chief, pulling the agents aboard. Ven and Reyes were last. As Ven jumped onto the skid, he looked back once, at the bunker, at the ridge, at the smoking remnants of a woman's war against silence. And he saw it, in the snow, just outside Echo 13's broken door, a boot print, small, fresh, facing outward. She'd been there. Not years ago, recently. Ven climbed aboard as the helicopter veered hard, banks of smoke swallowing the forest below. The last sight before they cleared the mountain. Echo 13 engulfed in flames. Self-detonated, its final message released. Reyes stared at the screen in his lap. The memory file was open now. It contained two things: a voice log and a name still active in the FBI system, still serving, still protected. The man who buried Linda Hale was still inside the bureau, and now they had proof. They landed at Langley under the cloak of midnight, escorted by 3 bureau transport vehicles with no markings and no questions. The agents from the Echo 13 mission were immediately split into separate debrief rooms, No phones, no outside contact, just long tables and steel chairs under flickering fluorescent lights. Agent Marcus Venn didn't protest. He sat in silence for over 2 hours before Assistant Director Riley finally entered the room, carrying a manila folder and an expression that gave nothing away. "No one's talking, Marcus," Riley said. "Not your men, not yours truly. Echo 13 never happened." Venn leaned forward slowly. "So we're just going to pretend Chimera doesn't exist? That Linda Hale didn't leave behind 3 decades of evidence?" Riley tossed the folder onto the table. It slid, opened slightly, revealing printed screen captures of Hale's final message and stills from the uplink transmission. "You think this doesn't scare the Bureau?" he said. "You think it doesn't scare me? We had agents in the field who shot at you, Marcus. They knew your play before you made it. That's not a leak, that's a cancer." "Then cut it out," Venn growled. "Because the only thing more dangerous than Chimera is pretending it's not still breathing inside your walls." Riley looked away, jaw tight. "This thing goes too deep. Your operation already triggered fail-safes. Langley's been swarmed by internal affairs and black budget contractors since your chopper touched down. Everyone's sniffing. NSA, ODNI, Homeland." "Then they know," Venn said. "And now they'll start killing anyone who tries to connect the dots." "That's exactly why I'm telling you to stand down." Riley's voice softened. "You did more than we thought possible. You exposed them. Hale's signal is spreading. Some version of the truth is going to surface, but it won't be this truth." "And the man in the file?" Venn asked. "The one still active?" Riley didn't answer, just stared. "Who is he?" Venn demanded. Riley finally spoke, voice flat. "Your mentor, Director Thomas Granger." Venn blinked. His throat went dry. Granger wasn't just some pencil pusher in a top-floor office. He had been the first man to pull Venn from Quantico, the one who taught him field protocol, the one who introduced him to Linda Hale. "No," Venn whispered. "That's not possible." Hale's uplink identified him by clearance ID, protocol fingerprints, and chain of command memos, Riley said, sliding another photo forward. "He signed off on Project Quiet Blade in 1992, signed her transfer to unsanctioned internal reassignment. The same week, she vanished. The image was an old directive, typed, stamped, initialed. At the bottom, G. Thomas Granger. He ran Chimera," Venn said, hollow. "He was Chimera." "Still is," Riley said, "which is why you're going to shut down Halcyon and walk away." "Officially," Venn's hands clenched beneath the table. "And unofficially," Riley met his eyes for the first time. "You didn't hear this from me, but Granger is scheduled to speak at the interagency briefing in 3 days. Closed door. He'll be surrounded by handlers. If you want to find out how deep this goes, that's your window." "You're giving me a thread to pull," Venn said. "You're hoping I unravel him quietly before it blows up in your lap." "I'm giving you a choice," Riley said. "You want to protect what's left of Hale's legacy, you do it in the shadows. Because if you go public, we both end up buried under 10 tons of redacted paperwork and manufactured scandals. You go rogue, I'll disavow you. But if you play it smart, you get justice." "Not just for Hale," Venn said. "For the others too. The kids, the ghost prisons, the families that never knew what happened." Riley nodded once. 30 years ago, they turned her into a ghost. Time someone returned the favor. The next morning, Venn sat alone in the basement archives of the FBI's Office of Records Management. Access had been quietly granted through Riley's clearance, giving him a 4-hour window to dig into Linda Hale's original case files. Files he now knew were altered, sanitized, but some things had been missed. Hidden deep in the boxes was a physical memo, real paper, hand-signed, listing Project External Nullification, Case Subject, L. Hale. The recipient was Granger, the author, anonymous. In the margins, A small note had been written in faded red ink. Mirror still live. Subject active. Ven stared at the phrase for a long time. She had lived longer than they expected, longer than they could track, and maybe, just maybe, she was still alive. That night, Ven returned to the memory file Hale had left at Echo 13. He played the audio again, slow, careful. Something felt different now. The cadence of her words, the rhythm, not just a message, a pattern. "They think they've erased me," her voice said, "but I am memory. You can't delete memory. You can only delay its return." That's when it hit him. The voice log wasn't just a confession. It was a time-keyed echo, her voice recorded over months, maybe years, in fragments, stitched together not for the Bureau, but for herself. She hadn't built a mirror to expose them. She'd built it to remember who she was, to find her way back if they broke her. Marcus Ven stood, heart pounding. If she was alive, if some part of her had survived the programming, the black site conditioning, the silence, she might not even know her name anymore. But she had left the trail for herself too. Linda Hale had left a map not just for rescue, but for recovery. The interagency briefing was held 3 days later on the 6th floor of the Hoover building, in a windowless conference chamber known unofficially as Room Gray. No cameras, no recordings. Attendance by direct invitation only. The kind of gathering where policies weren't discussed but decided, and where secrets didn't just stay buried. They were rewritten before they could be spoken. Marcus Ven walked in alone, wearing a charcoal suit that still bore dust from Echo 13 on the soles of his shoes. He'd shaved, cut his hair, played the part. But his eyes told a different story. They no longer belonged to a loyal agent. They belonged to a man who had looked directly into the machine and chosen not to flinch. The room smelled faintly of toner and burnt coffee. Leather chairs surrounded a long polished table beneath recessed lighting. Seated already were 8 men and 4 women, bureau chiefs, Pentagon liaisons, a homeland director, and 2 faces Ven didn't recognize. Not that it mattered, only one seat commanded the table. And 5 minutes after Ven arrived, Director Thomas Granger stepped into the room and claimed it. Granger was 66 now, but carried himself like someone decades younger. Crisp blue suit, perfect posture, trim gray beard, eyes like polished marble, reflective but unreadable. The room quieted. "Thank you all for coming," he said, voice warm but practiced. "Today's agenda is sensitive. We'll be discussing internal signal breaches, unauthorized signal uplinks out of Region 6, and implications for Black Sector integrity." No one reacted. No one needed to. The words were bureaucratic masks for what had really happened. The Echo 13 detonation, the release of Project Hale's data, and the spread of truths the Bureau had spent decades suppressing. Granger glanced down at a folder marked Internal Security Report, Halcyon. Then, without looking up, said, "Agent Ven, you led the task force. Why don't you tell us what you found?" Ven didn't hesitate. "We found Hale's last transmission site. We found a live uplink, and we found a trail of data that matched dozens of our own case redactions. It wasn't cartel chatter. It was ours." Granger nodded slowly, his voice calm. "And the transmission? You believe it was authentic?" "Yes," Ven said, "and personal." "So you think Hale survived?" "I think she endured." "That's a curious distinction." Granger smiled faintly. "But let's play that out. If she did survive, if the Bureau did mishandle her, what do you propose we do? Apologize? Retract 30 years of interagency containment policy? How many black projects do you think were built on intel we'd have to now deem inadmissible?" "That's not my call," Ven said. "Then what is your call?" Granger asked, gaze hardening. "Why are you really here, Agent Ven?" Ven paused, then took a step closer to the table. "Because Linda Hale wasn't just broadcasting to the world, she was broadcasting to herself, and that means she's still alive, somewhere, and I intend to find her." A silence followed. Then one of the nameless men to Granger's left, A younger tech-wired type with the look of a DARPA handler leaned forward. "You're suggesting a compromised agent is still active, possibly unstable, possibly dangerous." "I'm suggesting a woman the Bureau failed is still trying to finish the job we stopped her from completing," Ven replied. "And you're not going to find her by calling her unstable. You're going to find her by calling her what she is, a better agent than all of us." Granger didn't blink, but Ven saw it. A twitch in the corner of his mouth, the faintest fissure in the armor. "That'll be all," Granger said. "This briefing is concluded." As chairs scraped against the floor and agents began to shuffle out, Ven stayed frozen. Granger rose last. Then, just before leaving, he leaned in and whispered low enough for only Ven to hear. "Careful how far you chase ghosts, Marcus. You might start to become one." Ven didn't answer. He just watched Granger walk out, followed by his entourage. But something had shifted, something Granger hadn't meant to show. That night, Ven returned to the secure Halcyon war room, now technically disbanded but still humming with the last echoes of the operation. Reyes was already there, pacing. "I decrypted more of the Hale drive," he said. "There's a directory we missed, hidden in Bureau server call logs. She embedded it into staff email auto archives, disguised as spam filter rules." "Where?" Ven asked. "Only one place," Reyes said. "Someone she trusted, someone who accessed her file the day she disappeared." He turned the screen. Recipient: Ven.M. Internal review, May 1993. "She left it for you." Ven stared. In 1993, he'd still been in training, just a recruit who asked too many questions. Hale had known even then, known he'd come back, known he'd look. Inside the hidden archive was a single .wav file and a folder labeled Delta Protocol, If I Forget Me. The file began to play. "You're not supposed to be here yet," Linda's voice said, recorded decades earlier. "Which means something went wrong, which means I probably died. But if I didn't, if some part of me survived, this is where you remind me. This is where you wake me up." Reyes stood still. She embedded a memory trace, not for us, for herself. If we find her, if she doesn't know who she is anymore. "This will bring her back," Ven said. And suddenly, everything changed. This wasn't a case. This wasn't an operation. This was a rescue. And Linda Hale was no longer just a voice from the past. She was waiting, somewhere, to remember who she was. They started with behavioral patterns. Reyes ran Hale's archived voice data through psychological cadence software, comparing her speech in 1992 to the 2024 wiretap burst. The changes weren't just tonal, they were neurological. "She's alive," Reyes said, "but something's off. Her language structure is fractured. Sentence pacing suggests memory suppression. She's navigating her own brain like it's hostile terrain. She's been reprogrammed," Ven said, "and she's fighting to undo it." "Not just fighting," Reyes said, "winning." Using a cross-reference of surveillance uplinks and the If I Forget Me memory trace, they narrowed the potential locations to 7. Each one matched a Chimera shell company listed in Hale's broadcast: assisted care homes, memory disorder clinics, abandoned FEMA shelters. But one stood out: a private facility in Vermont, never listed under Chimera's name, but paid through 6 layers of shell organizations linked to Virex Dynamics. The front, Silver Hollow Neurological Recovery Center. On paper, it catered to veterans with trauma-linked aphasia. But every patient had one thing in common: no family listed, no visitors, no digital presence. "It's a black site for failed assets," Reyes said. "People they tried to rewire, but couldn't fully control. Or people they didn't want to kill," Ven added. "People like Linda." 2 days later, Ven and Reyes were parked on a dirt road outside Silver Hollow, watching through long-range optics. The facility was nestled inside a hollow basin of pine trees, 3 stories, white brick, surrounded by a chain-link fence and a private security gate. No signage, no guards outside, but cameras everywhere. "Looks medical," Reyes said. "But those cameras aren't civilian. That's tactical-grade facial tracking." "Because they're not watching who comes in," Ven said. "They're watching who tries to get out." They initiated a 2-man breach protocol disguised as a health inspection. Ven wore a clipboard. Reyes carried a briefcase filled with forged inspection documents and a mini pulse jammer disguised as a defibrillator. The receptionist barely looked up when they entered, her screen filled with anonymized charts. "We're from State Health Oversight. Routine evaluation," Ven said flatly. "Someone will be with you shortly," she mumbled. 10 minutes passed before a man in a white coat arrived, late 40s, too polished to be just a neurologist. "Dr. Calver," he said. "We didn't receive notification of any inspection." "That's why it's called unannounced," Ven replied, flashing a badge Reyes had cloned from an actual Vermont regulator. "You have records to show us?" Calver hesitated. "Just enough." "Of course. Right this way." They followed him through narrow, fluorescent-lit hallways lined with patient doors. Each one had a code, not a name. Rooms 214, 309, 106, each silent, blinds drawn, some with muffled breathing inside. Calver led them to a records office and produced a list. Reyes thumbed through it quickly. "You have 32 patients?" "Correct," Calver said. "All under specialized memory rehabilitation." Reyes flipped to the final page, a patient listed only as LH-aphasia stage, 3 nonverbal, high stimulation threshold. Ven looked up. "We'd like to see 3C. "She's non-responsive," Calver replied. "Severe cognitive fragmentation. There's no use." "That's not your call." Ven's voice hardened. "Let's go." Calver hesitated again, then nodded. Room 3C was at the far end of the 2nd floor, tucked behind a security door that required 2 key cards. Calver opened it, and Ven immediately noticed the difference. The hallway was colder, darker, rooms spaced farther apart. "We isolate our high-intensity patients," Calver explained, his voice clinical. "Sensory control aids reprocessing." Ven didn't respond. He stopped outside 3C and waited as Calver slid the keycard again. The door clicked. Inside was a sterile, white room. A single bed, 1 chair, a vent, no mirrors, no sharp objects, and in the corner, facing the wall, sat a woman, thin, pale, hair streaked gray. She rocked gently, knees pulled to her chest. "Linda," Ven said. No response. Reyes stepped forward, quietly opened the briefcase, and pulled out a compact speaker. He clicked it on and played the beginning of the "If I Forget Me" file. Hale's voice filled the room, her voice from before. "You're not supposed to be here yet, which means something went wrong." The woman stopped rocking, froze, turned her head slightly. "But if I didn't, if some part of me survived, this is where you wake me up." Her head turned further, eyes wide, not recognition, but recognizing the possibility of recognition. Ven stepped closer. "Linda, it's Marcus. You left a trail. I followed it." Her mouth moved, barely. A breath, then a word. "Gate." Ven's pulse surged. She could speak. She still had words. "You're at the gate," he said. "I've got the key. You gave it to me 30 years ago." Her hands trembled. She reached out, not to touch, but to connect. The way someone reaches in the dark for something they used to know. And in that moment, something in her eyes changed. A flicker, a spark. Then, chaos. Behind them, the hallway exploded with sound. Yelling, radios, boots. The facility had tripped an internal alarm. Calver was gone. The staff were advancing, not to help, but to contain. "They know who she is," Reyes said. "We have 60 seconds max." Ven pulled Hale to her feet. She stumbled, but walked. Reyes triggered the pulse jammer. knocking out the security cameras for 20 seconds. Just enough. They made it to the stairwell, then the exit, into the cold air, into the car, into freedom. They didn't speak until they were 20 miles away. Hale stared out the window, silent. Then softly, "I left the door open. For them, too." Ven turned to her. "For who?" She didn't answer, but Reyes did. She's not the only one they reprogrammed. And on the drive back, they made a terrifying discovery. There were over 100 memory patients in Chimera's closed network. Linda Hale had just been the first. The others were still inside, still forgotten, still waiting to remember. They reached a safe house near Albany by nightfall, a former U.S. Marshals recovery cabin embedded in state property, decommissioned in 2009, now off every official registry. Ven carried Linda inside, her weight shockingly light, her steps still uncertain. Reyes stayed behind, sweeping the perimeter for drones or tracking devices. Inside, the cabin was cold but secure, Faraday screened, offline, shielded. Ven laid Linda down on a small cot, wrapped her in a blanket, and started a fire in the stone hearth. The moment felt surreal, like sheltering a prophet whose gospel had been buried beneath concrete and protocol. Linda stared into the flames without blinking. She hadn't spoken since the car. Not a word, not a sound. Until Reyes returned an hour later with something unexpected. A data drive he'd pulled from the Silver Hollow facility during their escape. "I grabbed it from Calver's private terminal," he said, tossing it on the table. "It wasn't labeled. I thought it was patient logs. It's not." Ven plugged it into the secure rig. The screen flickered, and a single interface loaded. Chimera Internal Recovery System, Echo Tree Protocol. Beneath it, a list of names, over 100, each assigned a unique code, and each marked either active or sleep. "They're not just watching them," Reyes said. "They're controlling them." A log file opened automatically. It was a maintenance note, time-stamped just 1 week before. Patient LH exhibiting spike anomalies. Contingency protocol RQ7 active. If consciousness breach detected, initiate reawakening failsafe. Ven read the next line aloud. "Echo Tree does not allow retrieval, only reset." "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" he asked. Reyes's voice dropped. "It means the moment they show signs of recovering who they are, the system kills them. It calls it a reset, but the code is a neural crash loop. It shuts down brain function until they flatline." Ven stood slowly. "So she's not safe yet." "None of them are," Reyes said. "Linda broke out before the signal hit. But if any of the others start to remember, even just start, that system kills them in their beds, automatically." Ven paced, hands clenched, mind racing. "Can we disable it?" "Maybe," Reyes said, "but it's tied to their EEG monitors and vitals. Hardwired. This isn't just code. It's biomedicine. If we shut it off wrong, it could kill them anyway." Linda stirred on the cot. Her eyes were locked on them now, watching, listening. And then, as if plucked from somewhere deeper than her mind, she whispered, "The gate is open." Ven turned. "Linda, do you understand where you are?" "I opened it," she said slowly, "but I couldn't close it. They built a loop. I found the source code. I tried to lock it. That's when they took me." "Echo Tree?" Ven asked. She nodded. "It's a firewall for the mind. They tested it on me first. I was their mirror. If I remembered, others would too." She closed her eyes. "So they buried me alive." Reyes turned to Ven, jaw tight. If what she's saying is true, the moment she regains full memory, the system might recognize her signal again. It could trigger across the entire network. "Which means," Ven began, "if she wakes up, they all might. Or they all might die." The fire crackled behind them. Outside, the forest was quiet. Snow began to fall, thick and slow, burying the cabin in silence. Ben stared at the screen again. Each name was still listed, still blinking, still under control. And then, a flicker. Line 14. Subject 14, S. Anders. Status, sleep. Suddenly shifted. Status, breach detected. Reawakening. Failsafe armed. Oh no, Reyes said. Someone else is remembering. Ven's instincts snapped into gear. Where's the location log? Reyes pulled it up. Philadelphia, a facility called Medicis Cognitive. It's one of the shell clinics from Hale's map. Subject 14 was exposed to Hale's broadcast signal. That's what's triggering this. The mirror is working. And Echo Tree is about to kill her for it. Unless we cut the transmission node, Reyes said. But that's live equipment, medical, regulated. We can't just unplug it. It'll trigger the kill sequence. Then we fake it, Ven said. We simulate vitals. Keep the monitor happy while we pull her out. Do we have time? We make time. Ven grabbed his jacket, checking the field case for the portable relay shield. We get to her before they do. Reyes hesitated. And what about the others? What about Linda? Ven looked back at her. She was sitting up now, eyes clear, voice stronger. Find them, she said. All of them, because Chimera didn't erase us. She tapped her head gently. They just put us to sleep. Ven nodded once. Then it's time to wake up. And somewhere in Philadelphia, another woman opened her eyes and remembered her name. It began at 2:07 a.m. Eastern Time, a single silent burst from a private server buried inside an old Department of Transportation relay in Vermont. The packet was small, unassuming, and cloaked in legacy encryption no modern system could parse. But the content wasn't digital. It was human. A voice file, embedded with neural frequency overlays keyed to dormant biometric receivers across 7 separate Chimera-linked facilities. It said only one sentence: "You are not who they told you to be." And when that file played, across sleeping rooms, inside padded cells, through EEG monitors and acoustic walls, something incredible happened. One by one, people began to wake up. At Medicis Cognitive in Philadelphia, Subject 14, Sarah Anders, sat up in her hospital bed and said her full name aloud for the first time in 18 years. In a Wyoming facility registered as a dementia hospice, Subject 42 walked into the hallway and asked a nurse where her parents were. Not because she was confused, but because she suddenly remembered. In Dallas, in Portland, in Anchorage, across the country, 37 reprogrammed individuals began to break through the fog. It wasn't perfect. Some remembered in fragments. Some collapsed from the cognitive flood. 2 had seizures. 1 went silent entirely. But they woke up. Chimera's firewall, Echo Tree, had failed. In the cabin, Ven and Reyes monitored the uplink in real time, watching node after node switch from sleep to breach, then to active. By 2:14 a.m., the screen showed 49 active subjects. By 2:19, 66. By 2:25, 81. And Linda Hale stood in the center of the cabin, her back straight, her voice steady for the first time. "They were never machines," she said. "They were mirrors, and I cracked them all." Then, at 2:32, the screen changed. Not a name, not a code, just a word. Protocol, Omega Vale, active. Reyes paled. "What is that?" Linda didn't blink. "Their reset protocol, the final one." "What does it do?" "It kills the source." "What source?" She turned to Ven. "Me." And then the power cut out. Not from the cabin, from the entire region. A localized EMP swept through 4 counties. Phones went dead, backups failed, GPS blacked out. A final kill signal, built for one purpose, to find her and erase her, but they were already gone. Reyes had predicted the failsafe. Minutes earlier, he'd rerouted Hale's location data through a series of bouncing proxies using a fake relay SIM embedded in a bureau-issued ID badge. Chimera's signal locked onto the badge and sent the death command to a decoy 3 states away. Linda Hale stood, untouched. The screen returned, slowly, static, then numbers, then green. All subjects recovered. Echo tree, null. Ven exhaled for the first time in minutes. Reyes sat down hard on the floor, shaking. Hale, the woman they'd chased through ghost files and black sites and dead radio, simply walked to the fire, picked up a single printed document from the field kit, and held it over the flame. It caught, burned, disappeared. "What was that?" Ven asked. "My last failsafe," she said, "in case I lost." He nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now, I disappear." "You don't have to." "I do," she said, turning to him. "I'm not a hero, Marcus. I'm a memory. And now I've done what memories are supposed to do. I reminded them who they were." The next morning, she was gone. No note, no prints, no trace. Just one message left behind, scrawled in her same sharp handwriting across the kitchen table. "Let them remember." The Bureau never acknowledged what happened. Director Granger was reassigned quietly. No charges, no trial, just a headline about early retirement and 30 years of distinguished service. But within 6 months, 27 civil suits were filed against facilities across the country. Whistleblowers came forward, memory patients were released, and the word chimera began to appear in leaked documents, Reddit threads, FOIA requests. The system was eroding, slowly but permanently. As for Ven, he took early leave, spent 6 months off-grid. When he returned, he founded the Hale Recovery Network, quietly funded through anonymous donations and designed to help victims of memory conditioning find their way back. They never found Linda. Not really. Some said she moved to Eastern Europe. Others claimed she still transmitted encrypted messages during meteor showers. But one thing was certain. The mirrors had cracked. And behind them, the world could finally see itself again. Not as a machine, but as memory, awake and watching.